Donald Trump isn't even president yet, but Fox News is nervously reporting that MAGA Mike Johnson just pulled a shady, stupid, and disrespectful stunt that won't just jeopardize Johnson's razor thin House Republican majority, but potentially Donald Trump's entire agenda when he backstabbed a prominent but loyal Republican congressman who now reportedly wants to burn the whole damn place to the ground. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, folks, this is a big damn deal. Fingers crossed that it gets as bad for Republicans as it reportedly might get. We're going to play this a segment from Fox News as they nervously report the latest developments on Capitol Hill, and then we'll unpack it together.
House Speaker Mike Johnson ignited a firestorm, unceremoniously stripping the intelligence gavel from Mike Turner.
What was the problem with Mike Turner?
There's no problem with Mike Turner.
Why relieve him then?
There's a lot of concern. Doesn't have anything to do with anybody inside the building here, but we need a reset.
Democrats believe President-elect Trump orchestrated the ouster.
The message just went out that if you check this president, you're fired.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries defended the Republican chairman, calling Turner's removal, quote, shameful. But Johnson contends the Freedom Caucus or the next president weren't involved.
This is a unilateral decision by the Speaker. This is not President Trump's opinion or decision or any caucus or any colleague.
Turner allies fume privately, one telling Fox that Johnson treated Turner so badly that he's, quote, never going to vote for another blanking thing around here again. Some conservatives had problems with Turner after he sounded an alarm about Russia's nuclear capabilities in space.
That was obviously to try and press an effort to put pressure on the conference to vote for FISA 702 reauthorization, which obviously I'm vehemently against.
Crawford was the most senior GOP member of the intelligence panel. He was passed over to lead the Transportation Committee. Unlike Turner, Crawford opposes sending aid to Ukraine. Brett?
So, for context, Mike Johnson, reportedly unilaterally, but there are also rumors that this came down from Donald Trump or like top MAGA influencers, stripped a loyal, deeply conservative Republican congressman from a key position because he's seen as insufficiently loyal to some of Donald Trump's more fringe positions, like, for example, removing aid from Ukraine. So we're going to read this article. Speaker Mike Johnson said he selected Representative Rick Crawford of Arkansas to serve as the next chairman of the House Intelligence Committee on Thursday, one day after Johnson made the stunning decision to oust Representative Mike Turner from the role. Crawford has maintained a low profile during his 14 years on Capitol Hill. In the last Congress, Crawford, a retired Army sergeant, was the chairman of the Intelligence Subcommittee that oversaw the CIA. He was first elected in the Tea Party wave that swept Republicans into power in the House of 2010. And for context, for those of you who are relatively new to American politics, you can think of the Tea Party as the Obama-era Freedom Caucus. So the Freedom Caucus is the real nexus of like really far-right lunatics, some MAGA, some even willing to defy MAGA. That's how fringe and crazy they are. The Tea Party was basically the prototype version of that under President Obama. He's been a member of the Conservative Republican Study Committee. His official website said Crawford once worked as a freelance rodeo announcer and a producer after college. Quote, our intelligence community and its oversight must maintain the highest levels of trust. The House Intel Committee will play a pivotal role in this work in the new Congress, and Rick Crawford will provide the principal leadership as chairman, Johnson said in a statement. He's earned the respect of his colleagues through his years of faithful service on the committee and his steady approach to the challenges facing our country. In a statement, Crawford said that since joining the committee in 2017, he'd personally witnessed abuse within our nation's security apparatus that's eroded trust in our institutions and compromised America's ability to gather intelligence, okay? And so we're going to skip to some of these things like in the article to get to the part about Turner because that's really where the juicy part is. Johnson told Turner on Wednesday he would not continue leading the committee in the 119th Congress, okay, even though he kept Turner in that role previously. The shakeup on the Intelligence Committee infuriated some members of the more moderate GOP Main Street caucus, of which Turner is a member. One member of the caucus told NBC News that Johnson's decision erodes trust and could complicate negotiations within the GOP conference as Republicans try to pass Trump's policy agenda with a razor-thin majority. Quote, looks like backroom politics and backstabbing, said one Main Street member who was granted anonymity to speak candidly. A second GOP lawmaker who spoke to Turner spelled out how the former chairman could make life difficult for Johnson, who's under pressure to deliver for Trump. Turner did not vote Wednesday or Thursday. Quote, I think Turner will burn the House down, this lawmaker said. Quote, he will be a no vote on everything. I mean, he totally just got fucked. That's they bleeped it out, but we're just going to be adults here and say the word. Johnson on Thursday afternoon ignored a question from NBC News about whether he was worried Turner would hamstring the GOP's legislative agenda. Turner, a defense hawk, is an outspoken supporter of NATO and aggressively pushed for U.S. aid for Ukraine in the last Congress, positions that were in conflict with Donald Trump. Turner also clashed with some hard-right Republicans last spring when he led the charge to renew the key surveillance tool known as FISA, Section 702. Addressing the shakeup Thursday, Johnson batted down speculation that Trump or his allies in Congress had pressured Johnson to oust Turner, calling it a very thoughtful decision. I have nothing but praise for Mike Turner. He did a great job as chairman under very difficult circumstances, and we're just going to have new leadership there. And that's what you do in these select committees, okay? This is, again, a stunning development, just hearing these quotes about Mike Turner or from Mike Turner's allies that he might just burn the place down. And fingers crossed that that's exactly what he does. Because, again, Donald Trump will control the presidency. He will control the House by 3 votes, the Senate by 3 votes, so at 53 to 47. He will control the House, at least initially, by about 1 vote, and I think potentially up to like 3 or 4, right? But it's going to be a historically low margin. And Democrats will be in the minority in all of these things, to say nothing of the fact that they're going to be in the minority on the Supreme Court as well. So really the only meaningful checks at the federal level against Donald Trump's MAGA agenda will be Republican infighting. So this is good. It's good that there is the potential fodder for serious Republican infighting and rebellion. I hope that Mike Turner's notion of rebellion and sticking it to Mike Johnson, and through Mike Johnson, Donald Trump, who almost certainly had a hand in this decision, hopefully that attitude prevails. But it's hard to tell because a lot of Republicans may initially defy Trump, as we've seen in the past, but bend the knee. That is usually the trend. More Republicans who defy Trump ultimately bend the knee than they do maintain their principled opposition to something Trump does. It's just the cowardice we see among elected Republicans. But enough with elected Republicans. I want you to hear from some prominent Democrats on this topic. We're going to play 3 clips and unpack it together.
Mike Turner knew more about, the national security of the United States than any 20 members of Congress wander in these halls. So we lost a huge amount of experience there. But I also think, this place used to be considered a check and a balance on the power of the president. That's why we exist. And the message just went out that if you check this president, you're fired. Does Rick stand up? Does he issue a subpoena?
Exactly. This is it just speaks to the totalitarian nature of the MAGA movement. We don't just have one branch. We don't just have one government actor. We have 3 coordinate branches. Coordinate, not co-equal, because Congress, between the House and the Senate, were supposed to be the predominant branch. It's just true, right? They were not supposed to be subordinate to the president. The president is by far the most powerful individual in government, and rightfully so. But the legislature is the one that is the source of lawmaking. They're the only branch that can modify the Constitution, our highest law in the land. And so this idea that Congress is simply literally on every issue supposed to roll over for the president is actually kind of gross if that's the heuristic you adopt. Now, if you just happen to agree with the president, that's a different story. But when you have principled opposition to the sitting president and the signal goes out that whatever opposition you have, you're simply supposed to obey the president as if he's your boss, it's kind of gross. Here's Democratic Senator and former House member Adam Schiff on this change.
And so Johnson is here doing the bidding of Donald Trump, removes Mike Turner. We already saw in some of the other choices for appointment to the Intelligence Committee that the Speaker made last session, putting people like Scott Perry on the committee, like Ronnie Jackson on the committee, not folks that we can have a lot of confidence in upholding that responsibility on that committee, that Trump.
I'd go so far as to say Scott Perry and Ronnie Jackson don't demonstrate intelligence, let alone deserve a seat on the Intelligence Committee, but that's just me.
Has really already had his way in choosing to change the character of that committee. So I think we're seeing Donald Trump both as president-elect and in some sense as a alter ego for Speaker, exerting extraordinary influence over the House.
Very ominous indeed. One last clip from my favorite member of the House of Representatives on this topic, Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin.
Struck by this?
Well, none of the autocrats want him. The autocrats in Mar-a-Lago don't want him. The autocrats in Moscow don't want him. Look, he's been pro-Ukraine. He's voted with the Democrats for aid to Ukraine. He was a great mayor of Dayton who had a real bipartisan history and base of support. And after the terrible gun violence that took place in Dayton, he came out for an assault weapon ban. He's someone who's extremely popular with Democrats. Who knows what's going to happen at this point. But that's a terrible affront and indignity to a guy who had at least one more term as chair of the Intelligence Committee. And to have the Republican Party just turn their backs on him like that and disown him is a major rupture in the political fabric of the House of Representatives. It'll be very interesting to see what happens now because he has a lot of friends on the Democratic side of the aisle.
So again, I want to be very clear. I think it'd be great if we see Mike Turner switch parties because we certainly see reports. I live in North Carolina. We have an example here within our own state Democratic Party of Tricia Cotham back in 2023 being elected as a progressive Democrat in this state. And then just months after she was seated, switching parties to the Republican Party, giving the Republicans the supermajority they needed to just totally stymie Governor Cooper, a Democrat, and all sorts of similar stories across this country, at local and state levels. We hardly ever hear of a prominent Republican switching parties at a key time to become a Democrat. I would love that. That would be extraordinary and hilarious. But at a bare minimum, even if he were to remain as a Republican and just really stick it to Johnson and Trump, that would be great. Could it cost him re-election in 2 years? Almost certainly. But we have to encourage that attitude. We should be very clear that it's very likely that attitude doesn't persist, that Turner will be exhausted into submission, as so many elected Republicans are. But I think it says something that even Fox is nervously reporting that Mike Turner could totally screw Mike Johnson and Donald Trump. So fingers crossed. And in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.